Joining me now, former 9/11 Commission Chair and Governor Thomas Kean, co-chair, and Commission member Jamie Gorelick, former Deputy Attorney General in the Clinton administration. Tom Kean, you've talked about the importance of this investigation being bipartisan, as the 9/11 Commission was. Just look how divided Americans are over what happened, even what happened on that day, with all the visual evidence, in contrast to the way America was united against the foreign terrorists after 9/11.
Yeah, in that respect, they've got a more difficult task than we did. I mean, the country is more divided. The members, only 2 Republicans, that's not anywhere near the bipartisan. The leadership approved our appointees, in fact, made 9 of them. We were all what Lee Hamilton called reformed politicians. In other words, we weren't running for office again in the future. So we had those advantages to start out with. And they've got a much more difficult task here because Congress hasn't conducted a decent nonpartisan or bipartisan investigation probably in 20 years. So they've got a lot to overcome here.
Jamie Gorelick, what about the Justice Department's ruling earlier this week saying that former Trump officials can be called to testify, possibly bucking executive privilege claims? How does that combine with the power to subpoena change the calculus at all? Or is this going to be, again, people fighting subpoenas, a 2-year battle? We saw what happened with Don McGahn and completely missed any chance of having real testimony at that impeachment hearing.
Andrea, first of all, thank you for having me and for reuniting me with my favorite chairman, Tom Kean. I think actually a number of people will testify, a number of people who served in the Trump administration, and that will put some pressure on the people who served with them, because without the testimony of everyone, only a part of the story gets told. So I think the Justice Department's position is correct. And if I were, let's just say, Jeffrey Rosen, the acting attorney general and confirmed deputy attorney general at the end of the Trump administration, I would want to tell my story.
And what about the Kevin McCarthy's and the Jim Jordans, who, you know, we all want to know exactly what happened when they called the president. What was the president's state of mind? They told him what was happening, but their fellow members of Congress.
They are all, Andrea, they are all recipient witnesses, and they should be called. And as much as I love to agree with Tom Kean, if I had to choose between getting the facts out and having bipartisanship in this environment, I'm going to choose to get the facts out. I actually think that we are better off for the Republicans having refused to participate in a 50-50 commission, because I think they would have appointed people who would just turn it into a circus. And so the only thing that this congressional committee can do is get to the facts in the most sober and thoughtful way possible, and then let the facts speak for themselves.
And to that point, Tom Kean, the testimony on Tuesday from those 4 officers, yes, it didn't have legal impact. It was not adding to a whole lot of facts because they had been interviewed previously and we'd seen the video. But the impact of their testimony was so compelling. Still, that evening on another network, they were being mocked and awarded Oscars and Emmys for their performances by people purporting to be journalists who were anchoring those programs. So they subjected themselves to all of that and to revealing their personal stories, their PTSD, the emotional weight on their families, to be mocked by that and by all the supporters of the former president.
And that's awful, Andrea. I mean, it really is. I mean, let's be clear. This was a seminal event in American history. The first time since the War of 1812 that the Capitol's been invaded, and by our own citizens. First of all, we got to get to the bottom of it. Got to find out who did it and why, whether it was conspiracy or not, who funded it, if people were funding it, was there involvement with people who were in it? All those questions got to be answered. And what I'm saying is, given the way the committee was formed and the committee exists, they've given themselves a number of stumbling blocks, and they've got to get over those blocks. And I think all of us have got to support them and try enabling them to do our job. Jamie is exactly correct in those points.
Jamie, how important is it to find out what was happening in the Oval Office and why the delay took place and what was happening at the Pentagon. You're a former Pentagon official. You know about some of those civilians who were put in belatedly after the Defense Secretary Mark Esper was fired. Something was going on there.
A couple of comments. First of all, we owe George W. Bush a great debt of gratitude for having appointed as chair of the 9/11 Commission an historian, Tom Kean, also a governor, but an historian first, I would say. Second, the calling of those Capitol Police and the Metropolitan Police witnesses, it was a brilliant move, because what has to happen here is to set the record straight. And you do that by telling a story. We tried to do that in the 9/11 Commission by giving the American people a narrative to which they could relate. If you think back to what happened in Reconstruction after the Civil War, the Confederacy won the PR campaign by essentially saying the Civil War was an effort to destroy states' rights and an effort by greedy Northerners, when the Civil War was about ending slavery and defeating that practice in the South. We can't let that happen here. We cannot let the big lie there in front of the American people. And starting with those cops with their stories was a really good first step. I myself was crying listening to them. It was very, very moving. Now, to your last question, Andrea, Joint Chiefs Chairman Milley has talked about what was happening at the Pentagon. And the last time I talked to you, I said I thought that a lot of what we were hearing would change as we got the facts. And I think we will hear the facts, and they will come out and they will affect the American people.
Well, Jamie Gorelick, Tom Kean, for your service, thank you. I hope you'll both come back often in the months coming and keep us honest on all of this. Thanks for what you did.